All right, let's dive into this. Heart of Darkness. You guys sent in some really interesting stuff. We've got, well, excerpts from the novel itself, obviously, but also some pretty intense literary criticism and, oh, some post-colonial analyses, too. This should be fun.
It's kind of crazy how much is packed into such a relatively short novel. Decades of debate, really.
Hmm.
That's what we'll be looking at today.
Wait, what makes it so powerful, so lasting, And why is it still, honestly, so controversial even now?
Well, if you think about it, it's not just some adventure story. It
Yeah.
really makes us think about some uncomfortable stuff. About ourselves, about colonialism's impact, even like how we use language itself.
Okay, so one thing that got me right away is the setup. Marlowe, our narrator, he doesn't start in the jungle, right? He's on a boat, but on the Thames, here in England. Why do you think Conrad did that?
Oh, that framing is so deliberate. Look who's listening to him on that boat. A director of companies, an accountant, a lawyer. Conrad's already hinting at the whole system, the critique that runs through the book.
And here's the thing. We're not getting like a straight up account of what happened. It's more like we're overhearing Marlowe telling this story. So right away you wonder, whose perspective is this really? It's a game almost.
Exactly. It's active reading, right? You got to piece it together, figure out what's real and what's Marlowe's filter.
It makes you wonder if we can ever truly know the full truth of something like this.
And that's a question that'll stick with us. So Marlowe's tale, it takes us into the Congo River, which he calls the heart of darkness, literally. But Africa's not just a setting here, is it?
No, the sources I sent you, they talk about Africa as like the unknown, the primal, challenging all those European assumptions of what's civilized.
Right, and the river itself becomes this huge symbol, not just exploration, but like a psychological descent. You get these incredibly vivid descriptions from Conrad. The atmosphere, the dense jungle, it's almost suffocating.
Like the landscape is reflecting the character's inner turmoil.
Oh.
I remember one part where Marlowe describes the air as feeling no more natural than being breathed into an exhausted receiver. Creepy.
Perfect example. That feeling of unease that hangs over everything. And then there's Kurtz. We hear about him before we actually meet him. This brilliant guy, super talented, but he's gone native, as they say. He's got potential, but also, well, terrifying corruption. Like a puzzle.
And this is where your psych background comes in. One of your sources mentioned Freud even. What happened to him? Insane. Or a product of the environment. Or something even darker, just in human nature.
A question people have debated for over a century. Mental breakdown. Primal instincts. Something weirder. Conrad leaves it open.
Which brings us to the controversy, right? Some say Kurtz is what colonialism does to a person. Others say he proves savagery is in us all. Heart of Darkness doesn't give easy answers, that's for sure.
Ugh.
But those details, chain natives, the dying workers, tough to forget. A brutal look at what Europe did in Africa.
And the post-colonial critiques you sent, they make the point that even though he's criticizing it, Conrad's still showing Africa through a certain lens. Critics, like Chinua Achebe, they point out how the novel, even if it didn't mean to, plays into some stereotypes.
It reminds us that we all bring something to what we read, right? Meaning changes depending on who and when. But honestly, Heart of Darkness, not exactly an easy read. Symbolism, ambiguity, and Marlowe's narration, well, sometimes it's a bit all over the place.
That difficulty's on purpose, though. It reflects how hard it is to express what's going on, for the characters, and for Marlowe as the storyteller. It's moral stuff, psychological stuff, hard to put into words.
Like Kurtz's last words, the horror. The horror. This guy, eloquent, reduced to a primal scream. What's Conrad saying about language itself? Can we even understand the really dark stuff, let alone talk about it?
Wow, that's a great question. Like language breaks down in the face of true horror. Maybe some things we just can't comprehend.
Yeah, it's like those words, the horror, they echo through the whole thing. It really makes you think about the limits of what we can even grasp. And to really get Conrad, I think we got to remember the historical context. You had that source about the sun, remember that scientific theory back then about it cooling down and the universe heading for like eternal darkness. Oh yeah, Professor Winchell. It's almost like a cosmic version of what's going on in the book.
Exactly. The dying sun, the universe going dark. It's like a reflection of the moral and psychological darkness in the story, right? Makes you wonder, was Conrad saying something similar about humanity itself? Like the Congo is just a tiny bit of this much bigger darkness that's going to get us all...
Chilling, man. Especially with those ending lines of the book. The tranquil waterway leading to the uttermost ends of the earth flowed somber under an overcast sky, seemed to lead into the heart of an immense darkness.
The imagery, so powerful. The personal darkness, historical darkness, this vast existential darkness.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
But even with all that, there's still that feeling of adventure. Marlowe's drawn to it, to Kurtz, to the mystery. He hates it, but he can't look away. Kind of like us reading it, maybe?
That's key to how the book critiques the whole work ethic idea behind colonialism. Like civilizing Africa, bringing enlightenment, all that is covering up something way worse.
Oh, the sources I sent, they definitely highlight that hypocrisy, yeah. Extracting resources, enriching Europe at Africa's expense.
And Conrad shows this through the characters.
Yeah.
The manager at the central station, obsessed with efficiency and profit. Natives are just tools to him. He's like the whole colonial machine, cold and heartless.
Then you've got the pilgrims, right? Emissaries of light, supposedly. Yeah. But really, it's greed, wanting to climb the company ladder.
Even the accountant, who Marlowe says is a miracle. Fascinating. So meticulous, keeping his books while all this death is around him. Totally detached from the morality of it all.
Like those small characters are painting the satirical picture, Europe looking in the mirror, and it's not pretty.
Exactly. It makes us ask, why colonialism? What lasting impact did it have? And not just back then, but the themes of power, greed, corruption. That's timeless.
Still relevant today, for sure. We see the same things happening, just in different ways.
Oh, absolutely. The darkness isn't just out there. It's in us, in our societies, the systems we build. Heart of Darkness reminds us of that.
One thing I thought was interesting, that idea of restraint, it comes up with the manager, but also with the cannibals on Marlowe's boat. Kind of a weird pairing, don't you think?
It is. It's one of those details that makes you stop and go, huh. Paradoxical, maybe, but it says a lot about how Conrad sees human nature. The cannibals, they could overpower the white guys, but they don't.
And the manager, civilized society, he's restrained too, but by rules, appearances, keeping up that order.
Right. And that makes you wonder, is the manager's restraint, being all proper and following the rules, is that actually worse than what the cannibals are doing?
Whoa. Makes you think about how civilized behavior can be twisted, right? Like sometimes the worst stuff is done by the people in power, the ones we think are respectable.
Yeah, how social norms can be used to cover up bad things. And it brings us back to Kurtz. He throws out the hypocrisy of the company, all that fake morality, and just goes for it, embraces what he wants.
But by doing that, he becomes the monster, like a warning about power, about how tempting darkness can be. It reminded me of a quote from The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Conrad was influenced by him, It's about this frog skull that talks in a cultivated voice, and it says, "I had never seen anything so disgusting, and I have never seen anything so terrible."
Wow, that's a great connection. Both books, they get into that dark potential of humans. Progress, civilization. Sometimes it hides the worst parts of us ready to come out.
Like they're both saying, hey, humans are capable of amazing things, but also awful things. Don't ignore the bad stuff.
Ignoring it is dangerous, right?
Yeah.
We have to face the darkness in ourselves, in our societies, if we want to avoid making the same mistakes. It's like those lines from T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, which was inspired by Heart of Darkness. April's the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain.
Oh, yeah, that fits. Both Conrad and Eliot, they show that feeling of disillusionment, the world losing its meaning. And that need we all have to find something to fill the emptiness, to make sense of the chaos.
But they both warn us to. Searching for meaning, it can be dangerous.
No easy answers, that's for sure. But asking those tough questions, that's important, right?
Definitely. No guarantees of finding the right answer.
Yeah.
But struggling with it, that's what matters.
This is making me want to read both Heart of Darkness and The Wasteland again. It's incredible how much they've packed in there.
That's what great literature does. It unfolds more each time you read it. It makes you think, question things, engage with the world more deeply.
And speaking of unfolding, I think we should talk about that ending. It's famous for being ambiguous, right? Yeah. So much debate about it.
Yeah, what does Marlowe's lie to the intended really mean? And that last image, the Thames flowing into the heart of an immense darkness. What's Conrad saying?
It's tough, right? Knowing the truth, but having to decide if you tell it. It's like he's weighing the cost of knowledge, almost.
Exactly. And the sources you sent, they highlight how this scene brings together, like, all these big themes. Love, loss, truth, illusion, the whole deal.
Yeah, like that contrast, Marlowe knows what Kurtz really did, but the intended, she's got this totally idealized picture of him.
It's sad. She has no clue about the horrors in the Congo. She's holding on to this romantic vision of him, like a hero almost.
Makes you think, how much of what we believe is just stuff we made up? To cope, maybe?
And Marlowe, he's stuck. Shatter her illusion with the truth. Or lie and let her keep that innocence. You can feel him struggling. He sees how much she loved Kurtz. Can't bring himself to hurt her like that.
So he protects her from the darkness. Kind of a mercy, but also messed up, right?
Okay.
He's letting the myth of Kurtz live on, even though he saw what the guy became.
That lie says so much about us, How we need stories to shield us from the tough stuff. What even is truth? Is it always better to know? Or is ignorance bliss sometimes? Big questions.
Conrad's kind of saying we're all in a heart of darkness in a way, always dealing with illusions. And then that last image, the Thames flowing into the heart of an immense darkness.
Haunting, right? Beautiful and scary at the same time. What'd you make of it?
I don't know, it feels like the darkness from the Congo, it's not just over there, It's everywhere, part of being human. We carry it, and it's in the world all around us.
We can't escape it, can we? We got to learn how to live with it, to face it, understand it.
And one thing your sources talked about that I found really interesting is how Heart of Darkness is also about storytelling itself.
Well, for sure. The whole thing is Marlowe's story, reminding us that everything we know through stories, right? Makes you think about how those stories shape what we think is real.
Stories are powerful. They can teach you things, but also mislead you. Makes you think you got to be careful, question what you hear, look deeper for yourself.
Absolutely. So after all this, our deep dive into Heart of Darkness, why do you think this book still matters so much today?
Well, I think it hits a nerve. It shows us something about ourselves, something kind of dark that maybe we don't want to see. It forces us to look at our own potential for bad stuff and how we contribute to systems that cause pain.
It definitely reminds us that the world is messy. Right and wrong. It's not always so simple.
No easy answers. So, listener, what about you? What hit you hardest in this deep dive? What will you take away from Heart of Darkness? It's a journey, that's for sure, and we've only just scratched the surface. Remember, in a world full of information, being able to think for yourself, to question everything, to get different perspectives, that's crucial. Keep exploring, keep diving deep. And until next time, thanks for listening.